I am Wajahat Ahmed. I am a visiting faculty at OB Jindal Global University. Today we are going to talk about the rights of the elderly persons. To start with, we have the learning outcomes. So what are the learning outcomes of this module? The purpose of this module is to critically understand the rights of the elderly from a legal perspective, to develop an understanding of the legal underpinnings of elderly rights. So, elderly people form a unique portion of the society like any other group of people. However, they are widely considered as a vulnerable group of the society owing to the widespread belief of their inability to protect themselves. With the changing times, aging population, and growing concern about the welfare of the elderly, there arose a necessity of recognition of the various rights available to this section of the populace. In this scenario, a wide range of rights available to the elderly persons were recognized and acknowledged through various national and international treaties, conventions, and other laws. Now let's have a look at the human rights of the elderly persons. The aged enjoy varied human rights which can be broadly classified into two categories. So what are the categories? General human rights. Those rights which are applicable to all are also available to the elderly persons by the very virtue of them being human beings. Hence, those basic rights that are fundamental to human existence are also intrinsic to the elderly persons. Then we have specific rights. There are certain rights that are specifically made available to the elderly owing to their explicit needs. We have general human rights available to the elderly. So what are they? Right to life and liberty. The right to life is an absolute right inherent to all human beings, including the elderly. The right to life of human beings entails two obligations on part of the states, namely, a duty not to take away anyone's life except under limited circumstances of great necessity, like through lawful action for the welfare of the public, and even under those circumstances, the use of force / action must be proportionate to the necessity and should not be arbitrary. B. A duty to protect one's life by taking reasonable steps in the times of necessity. The state is bound to take proactive steps to protect the life of a person whom it believes to be at risk. Right to liberty is an integral part of right to life and implies the right to be free. In other words, everyone has a right to enjoy their life and all of their human rights within the boundaries of law and morality without arbitrary interference of deprivation of freedom. Elderly persons necessitate a greater protection of the right owing to the fact of greater chances of institutionalization of the age in the modern society. Also, their movements will tend to be restricted under the notion of their inability to partake any activity. Old age should never justify the deprivation of liberty. Elderly persons possess the right to personal mobility with greatest possible independence and enjoy the liberty of movement. The fundamental human right to life and liberty is recognized, acknowledged, and protected by almost all human rights treaties and conventions and fundamental laws of the land of all nations and their human rights legislations. Now we have the right to adequate standard of living. The right to adequate standard of living is incidental to right of life. This too is an absolute right and comprises of various other rights such as the right to food, water, clothing, and shelter, without which the complete enjoyment of the right to life is not visible. The right to adequate standard of living does not fade away as one grows old, and hence is pertinent to the elderly persons also without any distinction or discrimination. Now we have right to dignity. The right to dignity is an indispensable component of right to life. Right to life implies right to live with dignity and not mere animal experience. Human dignity is not only a right in itself, but forms the basis of fundamental human rights, as treating every person with respect is the heart of human identity. It's for this reason that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights has enshrined this principle in its preamble. Thus, to be treated with dignity is the fundamental right of the elderly. Respecting the elderly and treating them with all the dignity they deserve enables their integration into the society by liberating them from the clutches of discrimination. So now we have the right of equality, non-discrimination, and equal opportunity. Right to equality is an absolute freestanding right, quintessential for providing justice to all. All are equal before the law and are equally entitled to the protection of law and justice. No person can be discriminated against on the basis of caste, creed, race, religion, sex, place of birth, age, etc. And everyone is to be provided with equal opportunities to access justice, benefits of law, and so on. Likewise, elderly persons are also entitled to equal protection of law and equal opportunities in all matters and are not to be discriminated against based on any factor. Next, we have freedom of expression and access to information. Elderly people, like all other human beings, possess freedom of expression and opinion and the right to express their views without interference. However, this right is subject to certain restrictions under specified circumstances like that of national security, territorial integrity, maintenance of public order, and so on. Along with the freedom of expression, elderly persons also possess the freedom to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas on an equal basis with others and through all forms of communication of their choice. The next thing we have is right to education. So, elderly persons have a right to education and lifelong learning without any discrimination. They can access the educational institutions and facilities on an equal basis with others, though the right of the elderly persons is not explicitly recognized. It is inherent to all human beings. Most important of all, the elderly persons possess the right to be educated about health, safety, security, as well as the evolving changes in lifestyles and living. Next comes the right to work and employment. So, human right to work and employment branches out from the right to adequate standard of living. Consequently, elder persons are entitled to work, including the right to participate in the workforce. This right also enables the elderly persons to voice their opinion and participate in the decision-making process regarding the nature of work they can undertake, their retirement from work, etc. The next right is right to privacy. Elderly persons, like all others, have the right to privacy in all aspects of their life, including in their homes, family life, communications, health, intimacy, work, and financial matters. They cannot be deprived of the right on the sole basis of their age. With the growing concern over the issue of elderly abuse, the right to privacy of the aged are being violated under the cloak of protection. Providing protection cannot be a reason for divesting the elderly of their privacy. The next right is right of participation. Right of participation is the essence of a democracy. Elderly persons are entitled to participate in the social, political, and economic affairs of the state, along with cultural life, recreation, leisure, and sport on an equal basis with others. This right also includes within its ambit the right to vote, contesting elections, right to be heard, including in issues directly or indirectly affecting them, etc. Providing emphasis on the right to participation of the elderly persons and ensuring the enjoyment of this right enables the integration of the elderly persons into the social stream by preventing their exclusion. Next is right to peaceful enjoyment of possessions. The right to peaceful enjoyment of possessions is in a way qualifying right of the right to property. The right entitles the elderly persons to acquire, own, use, transfer, inherit, and also participate in redistribution of property. Further, this right also covers a wide range of other possessions like welfare benefits, pensions, along with the acquired rights like patents, copyrights, shares, and other economic interests. The right has been recognized at the regional level by the European Charter on Human Rights under Article 1, Protocol 1. Now we'll talk about specific rights. What are the specific rights of the elderly? Right to freedom from ageism. Not to be discriminated against on any grounds is a fundamental human right of all, and this includes age within its scope. Ageism or discrimination on the basis of age is the most inhuman treatment being meted out to the elderly people all over the world. The elderly people are increasingly facing the problem of discrimination on account of growing old. Ageism makes the elderly persons more vulnerable to abuse and also results in the deprivation of other fundamental human rights of these people. Next is the right to health. Right to health is a fundamental human right of all. However, this right entails special substantiation with respect to the elderly persons. The right to health of the elderly implies their right to gain the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. The elderly persons have, inter alia, a right to access healthcare services, take decisions pertaining to their health individually, protection against forced medication or treatment, etc. Thus, the right to the highest attainable standard of health of the elderly people, of elderly, provides for both freedoms and entitlements. The next right is the right to housing. Though this right is general to all human beings, the elderly entail a special protection with respect to the human right to housing by their virtue of being the most vulnerable to forced evictions. Thus, the recognition of the right of housing of the elderly persons enables them to live in their homes as long as possible without any interference. The next is the right of Social Security. The Protocol of San Salvador, 1988, defines Social Security as the right to be protected from the consequences of old age and of disability, which prevents a person physically or mentally from securing the means for a dignified and decent existence. It is the responsibility of the state to provide for the means of existence to the elderly, to enable through various welfare schemes, policies, and economic and social benefits like pensions, insurance, etc. In other words, elderly people have the right to Social Security without any discrimination. Next is the right of protection against elderly abuse. The elderly persons are entitled to protection from all forms of abuse, and this is an absolute right. According to the World Health Organization, elder abuse is a single or repeated act of lack of appropriate action occurring within any relationship where there is an expectation of trust which causes harm or distress to an older person. Elder abuse may be diverse in nature, like physical, sexual, emotional, and financial abuse, depending upon the kind of expectation of trust. Apart from the elder abuse, who also comprises of more discrete forms of abuse like neglect, exploitation, humiliation, and so on. The right of protection from abuse of the elderly persons may be summarized as follows. Right to care and assistance. The elderly are entitled to long-term care and assistance from family and community to enable them to lead a safe, healthy, and dignified life. The right to care and assistance of the elderly impose a positive responsibility on the family, community, as well as the state to provide the necessary care and assistance to these people in exercising their rights without any intricacies. Next is the right of independence and self-fulfillment. The elderly, like all other sections of the society, have the right to independently take decisions in issues affecting them, like human services, management of finances, property matters, etc., to self-determination inherent to all human beings, and elderly persons are not an exception to this. Likewise, the elderly also possess the rights to attain full development of their potential with access to educational, cultural, and the like resources of the security. Next comes the right to family life. So elderly have a right to family life. The right to family life is a human right of all human beings. However, it is of special importance to elderly, as there is a greater tendency of expectation of the elderly from their families, like in circumstances of institutionalization for medical reasons. Such separation of the elderly from their partners and other members exerts emotional and psychological pressure, which is detrimental to their health. Hence, the right of the elderly persons to family life has been recognized. Let's summarize now. The human rights of the elderly can be summarized with the following chart. Thank you.